Hello and welcome to my channel. So today's video is going to be something new for me, well, in two ways. The first way is that I have titled it Flashback Friday because this was a video that I actually shot over 2 months ago, like January 3rd, right at the beginning of the year. And I debated on when to actually put it up because I wanted it to be themed. And when I tell you who it's with, you'll understand why I was like, no, it has to go on at this time. And then I didn't do it then. And there was a whole thing. The second reason why it is a bit of a new video for me is that it is my first time doing an interview on my own channel. I have had the pleasure of being interviewed on other people's podcasts or other people's YouTube channels. Here I have done Real Talk with Yanni, and then I did The Nurse and the Nerd, which is a couple that talks about dating and relationship things. And I've been able to do a couple of other ones. I think at this time, I'm about to do another one, but I'm not sure how it's gonna go yet, so I'm not gonna mention it. If it goes good, I'll type out what it was here on the screen. And if it goes badly, I just won't say anything. But anyway, I know for sure that I didn't feel comfortable inviting someone else on my channel for an interview because, well, number one, I didn't know who I would ask. And number two, I was still trying to figure out my own YouTube journey as is, you know? However, I really, really enjoyed this process. This is something I want to do more of. So definitely I'm going to see how I can do that. But let's move on. Let's talk about who I'm interviewing. So I mentioned her in my International Women's Day video. By the way, I make those really for myself. I love a good compilation and I love a good award ceremony. And so I'm going to do another one for Mother's Day. I'm going to do another one for, let's see, what is it? What's the day? Father's Day. I'm going to do one in Pride Month. I'm going to do one, I don't care if people watch them. I like making them. Yeah. So if anybody's like, why does she make these? Nobody watches them. I do it for me to honor people that I like to see online. Okay. So Shani Silver was one of those people. And I don't know if I said her name before, but I'm saying it now. She is a podcaster. She is a social media personality. And recently she wrote a book called A Single Revolution. And the book is all about teaching single people, specifically single women, how to reframe their ideas about singleness and their journey being unpartnered. Now, the reason why she wrote this book is because for a long time, a lot of the dating advice that single women get centers around one specific idea, which is you are wrong. Your singleness is wrong, and you're single because you're wrong. You're wrong. And so after years of, dealing with dating apps and going on bad dates and really, really putting all of her time and energy into trying to find a husband and not being successful, she decided to take a break and really, really work on her own mental health, and A Single Revolution is what was born out of that. Since publishing that book, she has been on a number of podcasts. She has started a TikTok account, which got really, really, really big really fast because I think a lot of people can identify with her message. She's also appeared on talk shows like the Tamron Hall Show. And what's interesting to me about that is she and I actually spoke the day before she went on Tamron. And she said to me, I'm happy we talked because I need to get, speaking on camera out of my system because it was like right at the beginning of the new year. I wanted to have Shani on because she was one of the first people who introduced me to her platform whenever my content started coming out. So she found me, we recorded a podcast together, and she introduced me to her community, which I thought was great. And then when her book came out, she emailed me and she said, hey, by the way, I've got this happening. I think your community, people that subscribe to your channel, I think they would get something out of it. If you're interested, I could come on and do an interview. And I thought, okay. Now I will say this, we do be talking. We do be talking. This interview is a little bit long. I think it's an hour and 12 minutes, but I checked, and a lot of podcasts, okay, a lot of them, and this is very podcasty, by the way, a lot of them tend to run at a little bit over an hour. So you may want to chop this up and watch it in pieces. But I also want to say that, yes, we definitely chat and we talk like two old friends. And I went back and watched the footage the other day, and I just found it really, really fun to listen to. We have a very natural, nice rapport. She was a great person for me to, do this with for the first time. I also want to say, though, that the reason why it's a flashback for me is because a lot of the things that I say in the video, you will be listening to it and you'll be like, for instance, I say things like, yeah, I'm ready at my life right now to just decenter romantic relationships. Yeah, I don't want to be on dating apps anymore. Why? Why should I do that to myself? You'll see me say a lot of things about not pursuing romantic relationships, chilling, laying back. And I really do think that on January 3rd, 2022, I meant that. But then, as life would have it, I got an up kick in energy and I was like, no, I want to meet somebody. And if you've been following along here on the channel, you know that I went from being on dating apps to being off dating apps to trying to make out with everybody in the bar to letting that go to then meeting someone and thinking that he was the love of my life and then finding out that wasn't true. And now we're back to where we started. And so for me, I initially wanted to post this interview on Singles Awareness Day. With Shani hated that idea because she doesn't feel like singles need an awareness day because there's nothing wrong with being single. But I originally wanted to post it then. However, I think now it's extremely apropos because I got to go back and revisit some of the things she says, in her book about just basically standing tall in your singleness, because now I'm realizing that besides my best efforts, I'm probably still going to be here for a while. I also want to say this, a lot of the things that she says can come off as, and she's gotten this feedback before, as giving up, because she definitely advocates for not doing anything intentional to not be single if those things you're doing are negatively impacting your mental health. And she really, really drives that home. Like, hey, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. There are people who meet the loves of their life literally walking their dog dressed like Frankenstein, and they get married. Like, you don't have to necessarily act intentionally, because just knowing what you want, you're going to bring these things into your life naturally. So I know some people out there will be like, well, if I don't do something, what? And her whole argument, and as you will see in the video, is, but you can also be doing these things and nothing can happen. So it's really like, just pick your poison. But I'm saying that to say, some people, this might not be the interview for them. They may listen to it and they may be like, oh, this sounds like giving up. I don't want to, If that's how you feel you might react, you're definitely welcome not to watch it. But if you're open to ideas about how you can reframe your thoughts about being single, I know it was good for me to go back and watch it. Definitely stay tuned. I also want to say this. You guys know I can talk a lot. I talk a lot. She was a good interview subject for me because she was very patient when I would be like, yeah, you know what? It's like this. And then go off on a tangent. I'm working on that. All right, without further ado, here is my interview with Shani Silver, author of A Single Revolution. Hello and good morning. I am here with a very, very special person, Shani Silver. She is the author of a new book. It is called A Single Revolution. Good morning, Shani.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. So for anybody who doesn't know, Shani's was the first podcast that I got to appear on after I started making YouTube content. And like, I had done some YouTube things, collaborations, but yours was the first like podcast experience that I had. So I felt so honored when you reached out to me and said, oh, hey, my community, because you've built quite the platform over the years. My community has seen your work and found it to be valid. And I just have some questions for you. I was just like, wow. Like, I told my mom, I was like, Mom, this is a real thing now. So if you could you just talk a little bit about your work? Like, what is it that you do?
Sure. Well, you're my first YouTube experience. So we've given each other some awesome firsts. So yeah, I'm Shani Silver. I'm a podcaster and an author, and my work centers around single women and singlehood itself, and the negative narratives that have been fed to us since the dawn of time about something that isn't actually bad. And it's very, very important to me to communicate to single women that we have what I call a third option, because typically if you're a woman who's grown up in modern society, you know two things about singlehood. You can either date until you find someone, no matter how many struggles or horror stories or whatever it is, you can be on the grind and like trying to find someone, or you can swear off dating or swear off men in a really hetero way to describe it. And those are the only two ways that the world kind of knows how to understand a single woman existing in one or the other state. And for me, there's a third option. There is a way to remove yourself from the niceties of modern dating, if you would like to call them that. There's a way to remove yourself from the struggle, remove yourself from the grind, not be so committed to dating and center dating so much. There's a way to take yourself out of that space and still want a relationship, be open to a relationship, and look forward to one. There is a way to just live and exist and be comfortably and calmly and happily as a single woman who is not on a perpetual quest to find a partner.
Very well said. And so you have, that's a great definition of what you do. And anybody who's listened to your podcast, A Single Serving, they know that's exactly what anybody who's read your articles on Medium. So it's as someone who's very much in that position and who made the decision to not like you were describing, swear off men or swear, but just stop going about it in a way that was negatively affecting my mental health and making me feel like I was living a punished life. Like if I was, it was almost like I was on a roller coaster that wouldn't stop. Like I had to always be doing something, reaching out, sending messages. And I cannot say enough how relieved I was when that stopped. And so when I found your work, I was like, haha, I'm not crazy. Like there's people are out there, they're living this way and they're seeing the benefits in it. So I thought that was important. What inspired you to begin this besides the obvious, like it's just better for your mental health, but what inspired you really to start this path?
Exhaustion. Exhaustion is what inspired it. I've been single for, it'll be like 14 years in March or April. And for at least 10 of those years, I was very, very actively dating in every manner that one can date in real life, online, whatever it was. I did that for 10 years and never had even one relationship result from that effort, while simultaneously, of course, being in my late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, and just seeing everyone around me partner up in a variety of ways. I think what's so ironic about the dating grind is that I know so few couples who are actually together because they were on that grind and it worked. Most of the time it's people that met through friends at work, in random ways. But I was just so exhausted with fruitless effort. And it wasn't just the effort, right? It's modern dating can be a very, very punishing space, a very, very difficult space. And maybe that's fine if you do it for a year and then meet someone, maybe it's not so bad. But when you do it for 10 years, it is so bad. And it really does negatively affect your mental health, and which has ramifications throughout many areas of life. So I was exhausted and I was angry and frustrated. And I'm very grateful for that exhaustion and anger, because they made me take a step back and ask myself, why do I hate this? Why do I hate being single? Why am I even trying so hard to end it? What is so bad about this that I am dedicating every spare second of my life to finding someone? And when I started looking at singlehood and really asking myself, wait, why do I hate this? I didn't hate it because it's not something hateable. It's actually quite lovely.
Yeah. And you know what else I love about what's a message you consistently reiterate to your audience is that once you figure out that it's not the worst thing in the world and it's not something that should be hated, and inversely, you should not hate yourself because you're in this situation. Yeah. You stop accepting being treated certain ways. So what in your book, for example, you tell the story about how you went on a camping trip with some couples and you got to the Airbnb and it was just understood that Shani's gonna sleep in a shack somewhere in the house, uncomfortable, slammed between tiny in this. And you just kind of asked yourself, like, why was that the assumption that everybody naturally made? Why wasn't I considered for, why didn't we make an Airbnb where everybody would have a nice bed? Why was it? And so I think very much like the first step is saying, why do I hate this? And if I don't hate this, then I'm not going to accept people treating me like it's something I should hate anymore. And I think that's so important. It's like groundbreaking. Why
It's
did you decide then to write a book? Because I think, you're doing the podcast, you're doing the articles. So some people would be like, I've done enough. But why were you like, no, I'm going to sort of pen this manifesto and write this out?
I'm a writer. I have been a writer since I was 6 years old and learned how to form sentences together. I have been doing this my whole life. There were times as a kid where I was very, very discouraged from being a writer because I was told writers don't make money. You're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer. There were no other options for me. And who I am is a writer. It's very undeniable. When you are something, you know it, and there is really no erasing that. So I've always been a writer. I knew I wanted to write books my whole life. I have been trying to write a book in this space for many years, and I wanted to do it because of me, because of who I am and what I want to create and put out there in the world. And also, this this work that I do and the ideas that I present about singlehood, they take some time to get used to, and they do require a certain level of community and support to really adopt them, because singlehood can be a very isolating space, and especially if you are introducing brand new concepts into your singlehood, it can feel very lonely and scary and isolating and like anxiety riddled. And I wanted the book to be in the room when I couldn't be. I wanted the book to be a friend at the table when I couldn't be there. And so that's why I wanted something tangible that people could like own and make their own and highlight and mark up and all of that. It was really important to me to be there with a community when I physically couldn't be.
Speaking of highlight and markup, I'll say this for the video that we're making now. That's a very accurate like way to describe the process that is reading your book, especially for any of us who I've written, I wouldn't call myself a writer, but I've written, well, no, I write, whatever. But I was very much an English major, and then I was an English teacher. So any of us who are used to like tearing apart a text and like do I remember that? I'm holding I couldn't find a highlighter like I was explaining to you earlier. So mine just looks like a dartboard. I have all these black dots all over the pages of my book, but it's so necessary because one of the things you were saying is, thinking about singlehood in a different way is a hard process, and there can be a lot of anxiety. And a concept you consistently push forward in your book is this is about reframing. It's about reframing, and that takes work. And so when I was going through the book, I was like, oh, it's almost like a workbook. It's like, okay, this is how I think of this part differently. This is how I think of this part differently. So yeah, very much like when you can't be in the room to like help someone through this process, you can just kind of go back and be like, okay, now what about this idea? Like, how can I sort of take that apart? And so I feel like that is very true about the book. But you said you were in this space for a while, trying to get it published. And then I believe you just said, I'm doing it myself. So what was that process like for you? And what did you run into? Because I feel I grew up reading essay books, Bossy Pants and Yes, Please, and Why Not Me? And then I remember there was a book that was out. I Was Told There Would Be Cake. And then I know Issa Rae wrote one, about the awkward Black girl experience. Like I grew up reading these books, and your book is very funny. It's I was reading it and I was like, did she ever do comedy? This is funny.
I mean, I don't do stand-up because I have enough rejection in life. Like it is just and it takes a good solid 10 years to get good at that. I was like, you know what? this is my space. That's their space. It's okay. But thank you very much for thinking.
So late at night. So I've done it before, and they'll be like, okay, now your time is an a.m. And I was in my 20s. Now, if I had to go my slot, because the comedy club, it closes at 2. And so like when you're first starting out, my time would be 1. Oh no, I can't make it. But you, I was reading and I was like, why wouldn't somebody want to publish this? Like, I didn't understand what is the issue.
It's always going to come down to money. It's going to come down to, does a publisher think that they can make a lot of money selling this book? Do they find it marketable? And marketable is something that applies in the mainstream, right? On a very grand scale. And if you are not a famous person, what you're selling, what you're writing about has to be something that is very broadly applicable, easy to love, easy to like, easy to understand, super sellable. It has to be very well packaged and marketable. And I think my book is very different from the existing content in the world about dating, about single women. And for 3 years, I think I tried to sell the book and I couldn't. And at some point there was just this very Tracy Ellis Ross, I am the chooser moment where I was like, I'm done waiting for you to like me. I'm done waiting for a publisher to bless me with a book deal. I'm publishing this myself. And that's very scary. It is very expensive. It takes time. And then you have to write the book. It's a lot. It's very overwhelming, but I had to do it. There was no more waiting. I couldn't not do it anymore. It was almost laughable. I got like my last rejection from the last publisher that I had waited for. Sorry, a photo just fell off the wall. I got my last rejection from the last publisher that I was waiting for the second time through. So this is now I'm at upwards of 30 rejections for the book. So the last rejection that I got was almost laughable. It was as if it was funny to me that the world was telling me I was never going to be an author because I already knew that I was one. And it just really solidified for me that I was simply going to have to find a different path to publishing a book. And as it turns out, I am far better suited to self-publishing than to traditional publishing anyway. We don't know a lot about publishing as just casual consumers of books, but the way that the ownership of intellectual property works with books, the way that royalties work with books, it's far better for me to retain ownership and control of my work, to be the only person making royalties from my book. All of that just makes a lot more sense for me, because I think if I had actually gone the traditional route and seen how little I was going to be making from work that came from my brain, I would have actually been very upset. So I self-published. It was, instead of a publisher paying me, it was me paying a company that helps independent authors publish their own work. And it was
And what was
expensive.
that
And like,
company? What's the company called?
it's called Scribe.
Okay.
They're called Scribe Media. It's basically book in a box. Like, you
I'm
hand
going to,
them.
you wrote a really good article about that, like that specific thing. I'm going to go ahead and link that article
Sure.
with this video so people like know, but yes, go ahead.
So you retain control. You hand them a manuscript that is written the way that you want it to be written, that is your idea, your concept, everything. And they handle things like editing and cover design and the layout of the book and getting the book uploaded to Amazon and all the other platforms that your book needs to be on in order to sell it. They took away all of the stuff that I didn't know how to do and that I honestly had no interest in doing, so that I could just write a book, hand it to them, and they got it on Amazon. And that's what I needed, because it was enough. It was enough of this book not being in the world. It was enough. And so I did it, and I can't wait to do it again.
Oh,
It's,
good.
oh,
Cool.
100% it's happening more. Like, there's
Oh,
no, I
that's
do
awesome.
this now. I write books now. This is what I do now. So yeah, it's just, I mean, if there's anybody watching this that is even remotely interested in publishing a book, you do not have to wait for someone to choose you. You do not have to wait for a publisher whose primary concern is money to bless you with a book deal, as if your idea is good enough. Of course it's good enough. It came from you. It is yours. You don't need to wait for anyone else to validate that idea. If it's yours and you love it, it deserves to exist. And so I like companies like Scribe, and there are others that are helping people um, find ways to make things a reality where formerly gates had been shut. So
That's what I love in general about, there's not a lot of great things that you can say like are happening right now. But I was talking to somebody recently. I ran into a girl that I went to high school with, who's now the principal at our old high school. And she was like, "Oh, you should come work there." I said, "Well, I'm taking a little step back from the classroom for a little bit. I'm doing something else." And she was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, you would never believe it, but there's actually the way the market has sort of democratized at this time, like when it comes to who can make content, whether it's writing books, whether it's writing, whether it's podcasting, whether it's making YouTube videos, whether it's making, there's so many ways for the, once you could just like be an open mouth consumer. And there was sort of like this big conglomerate that was picking and choosing, like this person's voice we met and this person. And so the rest of us just sort of had to march, to the two, and not saying, that working in education is just marching to the tune of it. But the idea that I was able to say, oh, I want to try something else. And now we live in this world where those doors are open. I was explaining that to her. I don't know how much of it I said clearly, because this was maybe like hour 2 into happy hour. So I hope that I got it. But she was like, "Are you kidding? That's real?" I said, "Oh, it is. It is possible now, like to say, I have a message, I can get an audience, and I can now make a living off of being who I am in a way that in the past it was not. I mean, even like 10 years ago, it was not as possible." But you talked about getting it on Amazon. And one of my favorite things, I follow you on Instagram, is looking at your Instagram stories when you post the reviews that people are posting. And I felt bad every time I see that. I'm like, "Oh, I've got to write one." But what has the feedback been like so far? I know occasionally you'll post like somebody who just doesn't get it, or it wasn't for them, and it's like,
Yep.
get out of here. But for the most part, what would you say the feedback has been like from the
Oh
book?
my goodness. Well, they talk about the book better than I can, but it's incredibly gratifying whenever there's a review that someone says, "I wish I'd had this in my 20s," or "I wish I'd had this 10 years ago," because I keep thinking, well, there are lots of women who are in their 20s right now, and maybe they could just go ahead and read this now, and then they wouldn't have the experience that so many women like me in our 30s and women in their 40s have had with dating and with singlehood in general. The response is that it's necessary, that it is a new perspective. It is a new framing of what single even means. And when you reframe what single means, you change what you are willing to put up with, what you even think you have to put up with. Settling becomes laughable. It becomes really funny because why do you need to do that? Like, why would anyone ever? I used to be that kind of person that would erase deal breakers off of my list because I thought I had to. Because I was getting older, I wasn't meeting anybody. And I was like, well, I guess I could do without that if it means that I can find someone. And thank goodness I never did. Because when you date from rock bottom is what shows up. And that's never going to work out. You know
And
what
let
I
me tell you,
mean?
when, I have now discovered that the internet loves mess. And so I will occasionally, so like the same week that this video airs, I'm going to be talking about one of the worst Valentine's days I ever had. But I, I have a story time on my channel where I talk about even like in this pandemic time, I was so excited to just even have a date. I had not done online dating. I was out. I had met the goofiest man in the world. He made his own clothes. I'm not going to say the message he ironed on every piece of, but like he would literally iron the same message on a new shirt every time he got ready to go out. And he said he only wore the clothes that he made. And that would be fine if it was cool, but it was the kind of thing where when we walked in together, people were like, and then just they looked at me disapprovingly, like, really, girl? This is what he was wearing his pajamas when I got to the restaurant. He yeah, just really was acting like it was a treat for me to be in his presence. And then of course he did get up in the middle of us eating because he said his daughter broke both her legs. I had to pay for everything we had. And even though I'd driven out an hour to meet him because I was so excited to have it, and I was like, okay, well, sure, like if that's what makes him comfortable, I don't want, because there's a lot of, and I'm going to ask you about this in a second, but there's a lot of the messaging for single men and the messaging for single women is very different. And single
Yes.
men right now, especially I notice within the African American community, it's very, she's not a prize anymore. She, you let her, it's very like, they have their gurus. And then I think men of all races, they're ascribing to this alpha male, whatever, how, this is how you deal with women if you're an alpha. And so he very much was like telling me these stories. His attitude in general was, I am the prize. Like you have the luck to be sitting with me. And here was this man in his pajamas, who couldn't even eat at the table. Like he was tall, he was like 6'7", but sir, you're 34. You haven't figured out how to get the food to your mouth. It was like all over the table. He said he wanted uh, a margarita. He kept asking for a margarita, and they were like, okay, sir, this is what we have. And he was like, no, I want one of them red shits. I want one of them red shits. And they were like, you want the sangria? Oh, okay. And it was an exercise. And at one point he kept moving the table with his body, and I was like, please, like pull away. It was the whole thing. And before I left that day to go on the date, I was like perfumed up. I had chosen this top. I was like, I'd done my hair in a new way. I mean, I really wanted to just, I hate to say this, but I'll say it. I wanted to make sure he felt I was worthy. And it was like this, the date had to get so bad. I mean, well, of course he did abandon me at the table, because his daughter broke all of her legs. But the date had to get so bad that I was like, okay, never again. I will never, if I tell, because I know the work I'm going to put into the process. I like, even from just, but never
We
again. But
can
yeah.
we can thank that date. We can
Oh
thank
yeah.
that
It was
date
definitely a
for
turning point. And it was one in a lot, like, it was like, leading up to that, there was sort of a mountain of other experiences, but it was just like you were saying, as you get older and you haven't met anybody, it's like, oh, okay, I can date a man who makes all of his own clothes and only wears pajamas. Yes, I can do this. And he asked me when we met, he was like, so what's wrong with you? Why aren't you having any kids? Why aren't you married? Like, what's wrong? I'm trying to figure it out. And after that date, I texted him and I said, it's people like you. It's situations like this. It's not an accident. I said, I don't know what, I said, so you're going out in the world and you're still, because we'll never see each other again, but I want you to think about your behavior and how it's going to reverberate into somebody else's history. Now, he had 3 different kids with 3 different women, right? Why didn't you marry? You didn't think about how your choices are affecting someone's story. Just, and never cast judgment on, especially if this is how you behave. Like, because who would be like, oh, he's the love of my, anyway, whatever. But what I was going to say is, why do you think you wanted to make a book for women? Because like I was saying, I think men get a totally different message. You know, they get to be bachelors, refined bachelor. You know, I don't know that they feel the stress. Is that what you were thinking when you were writing this book? Like women need, or do you find that your audience is both men and women? Like both people can get, what do you think?
My audience is pretty female.
Okay.
And I wrote this book because I'm tired of lying.
Okay.
I'm tired of lying. I'm sorry. Single men are regarded as trophies and single women are regarded as burdens. But then look at, and this is no knock against relationships. I love them. I want to be in one, but I'm going to be very selective about the one I'm in. Look
Mhm.
at long-term existing relationships and look at the distribution of work within the relationship, work within the home. Look and see who's doing the lion's share of that, and then tell me who the burden actually is. I'm tired of lying. I'm tired of seeing relationship after relationship after relationship where like a man can't identify that the laundry needs to be done, or identify that the groceries need to be bought, or identify that some other heavy lift around the house needs to be done so that it can run smoothly, unless a woman has told him to do it first. I'm tired of lying. There is nothing burdensome about a single woman. Nothing. And
Mm-mm.
yet, single men are treated as these catches, right? These trophies. But I'm tired of, I don't know if I can swear on your YouTube. I won't, just so you don't have to put the
Oh,
marker up.
I do go back and bleep it out. You can say what
Okay.
you want, because then I put like a little fun emoji over your mouth. It's so cute to me.
It's bullshit. It's just bullshit. The dynamics are bullshit. Don't try and tell me that one person is a catch and one person is a burden. Both people are entirely equal. And that's the only discussion I'm willing to have, both in the dating space, in the relationship space, in the everything space. I'm only interested in an equal exchange. I
Mm.
do not want to participate in a dating space where I am seen as, okay, little girl, tell me why I should want you. Make me want you. Dance for me, little girl, dance. Absolutely not. I'm
Mm.
so tired of being a face in an ocean of faces that people can swipe through. I'm tired of having to become this court jester that's trying to retain the attention of a man. I'm
Mm.
no, sorry, fuck it. Absolutely not. There's no amount of um what am I trying to say? I just can't anymore. And I couldn't anymore. And that sort of, and it's funny just even saying this out loud and talking to you about it right now, it seems so vintage to me because
Well, I
like
was gonna
these,
say the attitude is very antiquated, and it reminds me of one of my favorite movies, Pride and Prejudice, the one from 2005. And there was this audio that was going on around TikTok, and the audio struck me for a couple reasons. First of all, I did not realize that movie came out almost 20 years ago. I was insulted, I was offended, and I wanted to revolt and strike.
mhm,
But
yes.
secondly, the women using the audio are older now than I was when I first saw the movie. And when I saw the movie, I identified with it. And they're older than me, but not they're still in their 20s. Anyway, the audio is, I'm 27, Lizzie, is what the girl says. She says, I'm 27 years old. I've got no prospects. I've got no husband, no money. So I have to marry whomever. I'm a burden to my family. She says this in the audio. And so these young women, they're in their 20s, maybe even like younger than 25. They're like, I'm a burden. I'm this. And so it's like this mentality that has held over from, I mean, Pride and Prejudice is set, Jane Austen wrote this. What are we talking about? We're talking about the 1800s here. And women still feel, and families still feel. My father dealt with, he works in the church. And so he was dealing with the situation for a little while, whereas that was very much it. This young woman, they were trying to support her because that's how people in her family were thinking about her. Like she can't stay here. She's got, and so I know exactly what and even if it's not that extreme, right? Even if we're not talking about Jane Austen, we're not talking about whatever, there has to be something. I identified with it in 2005. And when it started going viral on TikTok in 2020 and 2021, there were women who were identifying with it. And I hate that about womanhood, if you will, that's even something we identify with, this idea, like you were saying, of being a burden. Like I
Mhm.
have to, whereas a man can
Exist.
just wait. But women like, oh, gotta hurry up, gotta get. I mean, I responded this morning. I should stay out of the comment sections, but this girl, she made a TikTok about being 27 and unmarried. And she was like, people are always on me about it. And I'm thinking, 27. That's a baby. That's a little baby. And so then this girl writes in the comments and she's like, yeah, I know what you mean. I'm 25 and my family is always yelling at me about not being married with kids. She's 25. And I couldn't. And I wrote to her, I said, 25 is too young for them to be in your business. And she's like,
Mhm.
well, and she responded, she's like, well, my brother's 29 and he has 3 kids. And my other brother is 26 and he has 2 kids with his wife. They're just busy, man. They're busy. You've got time. And within that conversation, it's never, um, the burdenhood is deeply felt and it's deeply felt too young
But do
for
you know
no
what
reason.
happens when you're older? Do you know what happens about, I don't know, 5 times a week? I get an email from a woman who is telling me the story of she did get married 25, 26, 27, started having kids, focusing on the family. Then she gets divorced in her mid 40s and goes on an eat, pray, love and reconnects with herself and realizes that she had lost herself to marriage and family. Like, can women know no peace? Like, I don't understand. It's classic. Get married and have kids because you were told you were supposed to, then get divorced eventually because that's kind of what happens half the time. And then realize that you had just completely given everything of yourself to family and kids and had lost your identity in the process. I haven't lost my identity. It's right here and
Now
I
that's
like it
now
very
that's
much.
now that's one thing that I will say. Like my mindset now, and I think that's why I'm happy that I found your work and I was introduced to what you're doing because like a couple years ago, no. It was I'm on the edge if I don't meet a man and start. And one of the things I've been recognizing about myself lately, I was looking at I have like 3 ring lights, and I was like, oh, you're so goofy, because I was thinking about how I used to, like, I would teach during the day and then I would make these silly little videos before I started doing YouTube, and I might post them to TikTok or post them to Reels, and I'm very much the Stephanie now that I was at 17, 18. Like, I'm still hurt. Like, I've changed, but I can still get up in the morning and say, okay, well, what? And I'm not gonna, for me, I think I'm a little different because I did what I still would like a family if ever that is to happen. But I'm just saying I've found joy in what you just said. The fact that, like, I am connected to myself. I am. And my mother, she got married at 19 and she's still with my dad. And everything she does is for her family. But I've seen her as an older woman, probably since we went to college, so a while ago, take time to travel for herself, take time to
Yeah.
do her own hobbies, take time to tell my dad, hey, if you don't like it, you don't like it. You just sit at home if you don't want to come with me. But it took her 45 years to be able to do that. And I know not all marriages and relationships are the same. I
Sure.
know some friends who have incredible husbands. They
Yeah.
don't have to say it. They folding and cooking and what do you need, dear? And I think that that's incredible. Like you were saying, you still want to be in a relationship, but just extremely selective. And what I love about being older now is I'm really able to say, oh, well, it's not like I'm not trying to beat a biological clock anymore. She
Right.
won, whatever. If it happens, it happens. But now it's about what's the best situation for me. And I'm able to review and look at all these different relationships and say, okay, I'm not doing that. And I don't
No.
have to. I don't have to do that. I can, but I like this. Yes, I'll put that down on my list or whatever. So I think
It's
that's
the
good.
I don't have to. It's the I don't have
Yes.
to. That's what prevents you from settling and in the moment thinking, if I don't take this, nothing else is coming along. People don't realize that settling doesn't happen in the moment. Settling happens every day for the rest of your life. If you
Mm.
do it and that's the relationship that sticks, you have to settle every day for the rest of your life, for the rest of that relationship, wherever that goes. And I don't want to burden my life with settling because I just don't have to. Being in a relationship is not required of me. That is
Mm.
not required. It is not required of anyone. It is an added bonus on top of life that has been marketed to us as mandatory, but it isn't actually mandatory. You can live and live well, live happily and live fully without a relationship. And I'm unwilling to give up my freedom and my singlehood and this life that I have for any relationship that is anything less than everything that I want, because I just don't have to. I don't
Yeah.
have to. That's not required. And the book exists so that more people will hopefully see that, because I see sadness in settling. I see low self-worth in settling. And I also see it's not just settling in terms of starting a relationship with someone you don't really want. Settling happens when you stay on dating apps year after year after year, regardless of the fact that they're not working, regardless of the fact that you literally have to go to therapy to process everything that's happening to you in an online dating app. Like, that's settling too.
Yeah, always. And speaking of that, that is probably my favorite chapter of the book, the delete your dating apps, because that is where I was maybe like a year ago, 2 years ago. And I kept going back to it for a while. I would say, okay, I'm not on here. And then I would just delete, I would mute my profile or something. I'd go back and I'd look. And it was a ridiculous situation. And while I know, so I do want to say up front, a title like delete your dating apps can sound like, give up. But when you actually read it, it's just like you were saying, like if it's not working for you, it's okay to log out. And to me, that was like waving the white flag. And I was like, we shall never surrender for a long time. And I just wanted, but it got to a point where, like you said, you're going to therapy, you're starting a YouTube channel, you're doing whatever you can to try and process these situations that have happened to you, because it's a process that wasn't working, but you didn't want to give up. It's very easily accessible. And you just kept participating in it for longer than you should have. So to me, that's my favorite chapter, because it reaffirmed for me, like, you made the right choice. And I do think about sometimes like returning. I was thinking about it today. We're at the beginning of the year. I was like, oh, maybe you should. And then I literally said to myself, but you're feeling really good right now. You get up in the morning and it's about you. Even if you have a crush, because I have a little crush on a man who works in a place I frequent. I'll never talk to him about it, but I am nice to him. But my point is that you can keep that man, like, there's nothing, you open your phone up, this man is not stressing you out. You only have to see him if you go here, and if something develops organically, that's great. And if it doesn't, woohoo, your peace of mind is so important. And like, I wish almost that there was dating app insurance, that people, like, I want you to cover my therapy bills. Like, I want you to cover the days I don't want to go to work because I just found out some guy, that I was dating who turned out to have a secret life, which actually happened to me. So yeah, what would be your favorite chapter of the book, if that you have? Because there's about 12 or 14, I think.
Let's see here. The one you just mentioned, delete your dating apps, is absolutely one of my favorites for sure, because I don't know who needs to hear this, but he's not in there. I love you and he's not in there. Just, he's not in there. I'm very, very sorry, but how many years is it going to take for people to understand that? It took me 10, so you're already doing better than me, I promise, but like, he's not in there. Okay. Let's see. Oh, there's so many. This is hard. This is like picking a favorite child. I think the ones that I like the most are the ones that challenge the private thoughts that we have in our head. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you a good example. There's a chapter in the book called Window Shoppers. Window mm-hmm. shoppers are what I call those guys that you matched with whenever it was. Maybe you just texted back and forth. Maybe you went out on a date or two, but they follow you on Instagram. And they look at all of your Instagram stories. And you know this because you can see who viewed your Instagram stories, and they do it all the time. So they're window shopping you. They want to see your life, as evidenced by the fact that they continue to do so, but they want nothing to do with you. They don't want to put forth an ounce of effort to say hello, to ask you on a date, to spend time with you, even to get to know you. No, they just want to window shop you. But we let them, because that's attention. And attention feels good. It is the tiniest crumb of attention, and we are settling for that. So the chapter goes on to say, just block them. Block your window shoppers, because every time you settle for that crumb of attention, that person got a little bit of real estate in your mind, mm-hmm. and they didn't earn it. So just block them and never think about them again, because they're not going to enter your day anymore. You're not mm-hmm. going to see them in that list of people that viewed your stories. They're just going to be completely absent from your mind. And you are then free of this person who doesn't want to put forth any effort for you, but still wants to watch everything you're doing.
Oh, I'm insane. So I actually block anyway. Like, once something doesn't, and people make fun of me for it, but I'm like the guy that I went on the date with who wore his pajamas and then yes. ran out of the restaurant. When we first met that night, he didn't call to make sure I got home okay. And so I was going to block him because I'm just like, oh, that's one of my deal breakers. Like, if my friends can do it, if we want to make sure, and we had been drinking and I told you where I lived and you don't care that I made it to the house, you don't care about me, this doesn't need to continue. And people that were sitting around me when I said that, they were like, no, girl, don't, no, you blocking is for something really bad. And he went on to show he was, whatever. And
It was the legs for me. It was the broken legs for me because I'm just
well, that
not.
was after I made it to the restaurant, but I continued to, but that whole thing could have been shut down if I just followed my first instinct. But I do often get a lot of flack for it, but it's because I can't handle the window shopping. If I see you saw, if I see and you got to go. You have to go, especially if I like care about you. I realized this in my 30s, when I was trying to date in LA in my early 30s. I care more than the average bear. Maybe I have a heart that was meant for a different time. I don't know. So I can't play games. I can't play like casual games. It's not for me. So, so I'm a little bit more swift, but I would say exactly that. And I see things about that all the time on social media. Oh, I created a story. It was just for him. Oh my God. This one thing that people were saying that they do, create a close friends, delete every other person that they had in their close friends before this person, because you can't see who else is in somebody's close friends. So like say you met somebody tomorrow and you were interested and you wanted to post a story, but you want him to think he's in your close friends, but you don't want your close friends to see what you would show this person. This is how masterful women are getting, like young women are getting. Delete everybody else in your close friends. One person said they deleted like 276 people, deleted them out of their close friends. So where he was the only one, and the man still didn't respond to the story.
What is that effort netting out? Is he proposing? Are you posting a thirst trap and then he's proposing? Is that happening?
I don't know what the end goal was, but nothing was achieved, like not even a response. And I said, I can't do it. I'm not built for it, but
we are in charge of who has access to us. We are in charge of that. They are not in charge of that. We are in charge of who has access. And I don't like window shoppers, not because I think that they should be saying hello or asking that or whatever. I don't like window shoppers because they're entering your brain. They are taking up space in your mind every time you see their name, and they just haven't earned it. They have not earned their place in your life. I don't like the slow whittling away at our self-worth that does. So block your window shoppers and just see how you feel a week from now. Block all your window shop. If you can put forth the effort to delete 275 people, you can absolutely block your window shoppers and just see how you feel in a week. It won't be bad.
No, it'll be very freeing. You said that earlier you were like, I do want to be in a relationship one day. It's something you still look forward to. Mm-hmm. And then you also said about the dating apps, sorry to tell you, he's not in there. So I have a question for you. Are you, because how do I say this? Are you intentionally looking? And if so, how does one intentionally look for a relationship after you've decentered them? Does that make sense?
Of course it does.
Okay.
I do not put forth any effort to finding someone because I don't think that's a chore that is required of me to fall in love. I live my life, and at some point I'm going to come into contact with my next relationship. I know that, I trust that because I've seen it happen hundreds of thousands of times all around the world. Remember that we're not asking for anything insane. It's not like I want a yacht in Capri, like I do, but not right now. Like we're not asking for something insane. We're asking for something that most of the world does and most of the world has. So why is it so outlandish to think that a relationship would just come into my life? It's not. I don't put forth any overt effort into dating or finding someone or any of that because I did it for 10 years and it didn't work once. So that tells me that that is not required of me, because when I was participating, I didn't get anything back. And when I'm not participating, I feel better all the time. So I just live.
When you described your search, and I think this is half curiosity and half the way we're wired to think, and this is something that I'm trying to consistently reject, but because I had one horrible relationship when I was 25 and then situationships for the next decade of my life and then nothing. But I want to know, would you say, like, if you reflect on that time where you were putting an effort and nothing was happening, I know the truth. I know that really can, like, that's really what goes on. But you have people out there who would say, nah, nothing was happening. You were doing something. So if you could reflect on why you think nothing came to pass. Would you just like, would you say it was anything internal? Like maybe I wasn't picking the right people, maybe I wasn't doing, or is it just the way that it is? I am more inclined to believe B. It's just the way that it is. But what would you say to someone who said, "Oh, 10 years, that's oh, I know you were messing that you did that to yourself." Because people do it all. People do it in my comments all the time. And they think they're helping. Yeah, but it's not helpful. It's you know. But yeah, what would you say to someone who says that?
Um, so I would say that I really don't have a lot of time for blaming single women for
Okay.
anything. What I think was happening in that decade of my life were, I think two things were happening. I think first, I was getting an education. And I
Mhm.
think second, I was being protected. I don't think I was doing dating wrong. I think I was being protected from the wrong relationships. And I am very, very grateful for that protection. And it takes a lot of reframing, a lot of perspective shifting, and some time to change the way you think and feel about your singlehood. But my God, I've never met anyone that I would want to be married to now. And that's the truth. I have never met anyone that I would want to be married to now.
Isn't it
So I was
crazy
being,
to think
yes.
that
Mhm.
if we that society would respect you more? I'm just being honest because I feel that way about myself. If I had gone ahead and had the kids with the men who made me want to throw myself in front of oncoming traffic, like if I had just done it and be out here stressing out about my kid's dad and money and child support and his family and this and that, or that, society would be like, well, at least you're a mother, versus the decision I made at 30, at 29, 27, 25. Like it was literally like every 2 years, I was like, oh, what fresh hell is this? But the decision I made to choose myself and to choose, I looked at my parents' relationship and I said, these things do not look like what I grew, even though this is what's being offered to me. This is what I'm running into, because when people say, oh, it'll just happen, this is what's just happening to me. These are the people that are showing up for whatever reason. And I said no. And what's crazy is that I can look back and be like, whoo, I'm happy I said, like, you know what I mean? Like, I would rather have walked away and at this age, at 37 years old, be able to say, no, I've never been married, don't have any kids, don't have any stress, don't have any divorces, don't have, because that's what my truth would have been if I'm being honest. But I know some people would look at me and be like, oh, it's so sad. But I have stories in my family and I've seen, and so it's just, it once again goes back to sort of the thesis of what your work is about, which is just there's nothing wrong with the state that you're in. There's nothing necessarily right about you just because you're in a relationship. If it's not really worth it, then you have a third option. And so I'm so grateful that at this time in my life, I'm able to embrace that third option like wholeheartedly, because I didn't think, raised in like a very Christian household, you know, growing up in 1990s purity culture, having a true love waits ring and Bible. And I didn't think I would ever be like, meh, meh. I was like, if I don't have a husband by the time I turn 30, so long, farewell. I thought it was the end. And so being able to say, oh, actually, I'm all right. I don't myself, like even 3 years ago, would not believe me today, which is again why I'm so like refreshed and excited that I found your work. I have to
Thank
go be
you.
messy though for just a second and go back to what you said about not intentionally looking. So when you go out,
Mhm.
this is something I've learned about me as I feel better about myself. There is a caveat, and that Stephanie is a bit of a flirt. And so do you find like once you like feel better about yourself, you engage the world more gregariously? And I'm interested, you know what I mean? Like, have you found that like, because before when I was just like wanting to do dating apps and so relationship focused only for all of my interactions with men, I wouldn't dare. And I think that's where a lot of my self-esteem and insecurity issues came from, because I was hiding a lot of myself because I only saw myself in one construct. But as I'm feeling better about myself, I tend to be more outgoing and I feel more confident in the fact that I might just meet someone just doing that. So do you find that you do that more, like you engage, or are you just like, I talk to whomever to whatever end? I don't know. What am I?
I mean, I just feel unburdened. I
Oh,
feel very unburdened when I go out because before when I used to go out when I was still like actively dating, every time I left my front door was supposedly an opportunity to meet someone. And then when I would come home having not met someone, I was massively disappointed. When maybe I was out with friends having a great night, I would still come home disappointed because I didn't meet my husband. And that's just no way to live. I
Mm.
call it assigning secondary goals to primary activities. So the primary activity is I'm going to dinner with my girlfriends and then we're going to go have some drinks afterwards. And I
Mhm.
mean, we've all done that upwards of 1,000 times in our lives, right?
Mhm.
That never netted me out a husband, but every single time I did it, I thought that it might. So that's 1,000 times of coming home disappointed for no reason because I just had a great time with my friends. When you assign a secondary goal to the primary activity and that secondary goal doesn't come true, when you don't meet someone out on, just a regular night of having fun, you dampen the enjoyment and pleasure that you could have gotten out of just having a great night because it didn't end in you meeting someone. And single women have a really bad habit, and I'll say that, of assigning secondary goals to absolutely everything. Going
Mm.
to the grocery store, why didn't I meet my husband in the
Mm.
aisle with the eggs? I took a pottery class, why wasn't my husband in there? Because men don't do things. Men don't do things. Stop thinking that men do things. Stop that. It's just do the thing because you want to do the thing. Go out
Mhm.
because you want to go out. Go on a trip because you want to go on a trip. That, oh, great, maybe you'll meet someone. Stop
Mhm.
with that. It is burdening us. It is burdening single women. Do the thing because you want to do the thing, and the thing will bring you joy, and you're really looking forward to the thing. And please practice removing, this is for everybody on the internet as a whole, please practice removing this secondary goal of maybe I'll meet someone to every single thing that you do. Unburden yourself, not so that you can meet someone, because once you get good at unburdening yourself, that's when your spouse will show up. I don't know, and you don't know, and no one knows. Just do it for you. There's
Mhm.
always this burden of I have to do this thing so that I can meet someone. I have to like me so that I can meet someone. I have to find self-love so that I can meet someone. No, you have to identify with self-love so that you can identify with self-love. This secondary goal is burdening single women, and I'm no longer.
I'm really enjoying that right now as well. Like I'm seeing a emergence of people sort of climb out from underneath that kind of advice. I'm seeing a lot of content where people are like, so you said if I didn't love myself, I wouldn't meet anyone. And yet I'm clearly looking at you and you've been married for 10 years and you hate yourself. Like it, so are you sure those things really connect? So you said that I wouldn't meet anybody unless I went to the gym and lost 400 pounds and I did, but I'm looking at you and your husband loves you regard. Like, is it really about size of it? When are we, I watched a great little video the other day. I don't know why I keep saying little videos. Like I don't spend 90% of my time on TikTok, but I watched a great video the other day and this lady was like, we need to just go ahead and admit that dating is luck. And as much advice and like, uh, things we try and say and mandates we try and give people for how they get, it really comes down to, did you both roll the dice at the same time in the same place? Like it's very much so about, so a lot of, like you said, the burden that people feel is that it's just, it's not necessary because a lot of it is luck. But I'm seeing a lot of people walk away from, and I'm so excited. You don't love yourself enough. Is it, I love myself because I love myself and not because it, once I do that, people are gonna, I work on myself because I need to be worked on and not because when I do that, people are just gonna be falling from it. I travel and I become a full person because that's important to my purpose here on earth and not because when I do it, people, it's not ever about, like you said, that secondary goal of,
Yep.
well, I'll finally, it's just about, I'm going to do this for me. Like that's what I'm going to do. So
There
yeah.
is no if then. There is no if then to dating. You cannot do this thing so that then your person will show up. That doesn't happen. That isn't true. There is no if then. It is luck, it is fate, it is destiny, it is the universe, it is God, whatever you believe in. There is just every element to dating is not in your control. It's not, because I mean, there my theory is that if you interview 100 couples, you will find 100 different ways of how they met, and there is no perfect scenario. There is no, well, I got all dressed up and I looked so good and I was feeling so good about myself and I had been through, so much, this huge self-love journey, and everything was perfect. And then that's when he magically materialized in front of me, as if he was like poofed there with a magic wand. It's not real. It's just not in our control. And I
You'll
know
have
that.
one of those stories and we love that story because human beings love, we love, and maybe is it capitalism? I don't know, but we love, I
Patriarchy.
worked hard and I got it. We love
Yes.
it But
Yes.
then what they don't want to talk about is, man, I woke up one day and like I had actually forgotten to put my wig on. I was just in my cab and this guy comes up to me and he like saw me talking to myself because my pants were stuck in my sock and I looked up and I was like, "Leave me alone, sir." And he laughed. Anyway, we've been married for 20 years. I'm going to be honest with you, that is probably what will happen to me. It will have nothing to do with I was like, I bet because what I would hope is that the person fell in love with like the essence of who I am, and everybody's essence is not. I then became a world star fitness coach, and I am, and he. No, everybody's not the same, so we all aren't going to have the same story. And so, what I really hate is like this blanket advice for every person that starts off with, "Well, you got to love yourself." Oh, or if you don't love yourself, how would you love anybody else? No, knowing that a lot of the reason why we do love ourselves is because we're able to see our effect in other people's lives. Like it's a part, it's reciprocal, but whatever. But
The
yeah, no,
founder, the founder of Bumble met her husband on a ski trip after she had swiped left on him somewhere else.
well, what you've said something, and what you just said should be that should be their slogan, and also what you said should be on a shirt and on mugs. So if you ever do merchandise, that's what should be there because I didn't know that, and I love that I found out about it just now.
Oh, I looked it
So,
up the day that they IPO'd for 2.5 billion, I
mm,
think. I looked up how the CEO of Bumble met her husband because there was the picture of her with the baby on the hip and cutting the ribbon for Bumble's IPO. And I just kept thinking, there are so many hundreds of thousands of women on your app right now being verbally abused. And you're here triumphant with the baby on the hip and all of this money that you got from women torturing themselves on an app like yours. And it's, oh, but women are in charge, right? Women send the first message. The other
well,
way of thinking about that
we
is
could
you
be
made
here
shit
for
easier for men. You
we could
just
be
made
here
it
for
easier.
an hour when it comes to that because I don't like when you talk about like I I'm I you can men weren't made to have anything served up to them on a plate. It wasn't because they don't they okay. I don't like that. I see why she did it, but it is why I hate, I feel like every dating app has a piece of the public idea of like what it means. Like, so if you're this type of person, you're here. If in a broad sense, it's like, oh, you have eHarmony and farmers only, so whatever. But I feel like within that time period of when the swiping came along, you had Tinder, you had Bumble, and I hate that there was no third option. I don't necessarily want someone to have to give up my role as a woman and chase because that's just not how we're built. I don't want to have to do that. But at the same time, I don't want to possibly be just assaulted with only sexual requests is what can happen on Tinder. Is there no other? And for whatever reason, there's thousands of dating apps, but no two dating apps hold the public's attention more than those two. And part of the reason why I dropped out of the dating app game was I was like, I don't see myself on doing well on either of these. I don't see, and then of course there's Hinge, but Hinge has its own little. There was a girl who met a guy on Hinge. They advertise it as the app to be deleted. More
That's just
marriages, blah
clever
blah blah.
copywriting. That's just a
Yeah, well,
copywriter's
there was a
paycheck.
girl who
That's
was
it.
beaten within an inch of her life with a guy she met on Hinge. And he was just able to do this to women and move on and do this. And he happened to get caught and he would meet his new victims on Hinge. And he happened to get caught because somebody saw her story on the news. They saw her family speaking out about it and they were about to go on a date with him. And instead of going on a date, they called the police because he was a wanted man. So these apps are not, there's security. And what's so crazy is I used Tinder for the last time, I think in 2019 or 2020. And they had put in certain security. They had done, here, hit this button if you feel panicked. Like they're trying to, but I don't think they'll ever be able to revamp their image. And like you said, Bumble really got this great image of women empowerment and but it's actually the same experience that you're going to have on Tinder. It's the same, but they benefit off of that, healthy blonde white woman, but baby on the cutting it's very, and that's unfortunate, especially when that's not even her story, which is
Nope.
crazy. Yeah. So
If
I had
effort
one
is
last.
not, oh,
Okay.
go ahead. I was going to say, if effort is not required, effort will not be exerted. You've taken away all requirement for men to put forth effort on Bumble, but it's not just Bumble. So many apps are just like men swipe right on every woman and just wait for women to put forth all the effort. I mean, in the last 2 years of dating, I don't think I went on a single date if I hadn't actually planned it all myself. Like picking the date, picking the time, picking the location, everything was on me, or it wasn't going to happen. And it's
Men can do it. I've seen it. I've been on 2 dates where
sure.
that happened. And I've seen, and they do it. I've seen them do it, but that's, one of the pieces of dating advice that's kind of cliche, but that I honestly believe is probably the most important when you're talking about heteronormative relationships, and men who date women and vice versa, is if he wanted to, he would. And I can't, you can say what you want about like gender roles and so on and so forth, but I do feel there is a hunter dynamic and a gathering, like there's just different dynamics. And when a man wants to do something, get out of his way. He doesn't need you to send him a message. Hi, he doesn't need you to plan it. Are you serious? When a man wants to do, and this is what I was telling somebody the other day, because they are very into like, with their tarot cards, I did a story time about on my channel about how I used to be really into calling psychics during my hell decade of trying to date. And they would always be like, oh, well, this guy's coming up, this guy's coming up. But I would meet the guy, but I would always notice there was like very little effort from him. Free will is always a huge thing. Just because people have the potential does not mean they'll carry out their parts. And I just stepped back from it one day and I was like, wow, I'm wasting all this time and all this anxiety being, obsessed with these men that are supposed to come in my life. And sometimes going after them and pursuing them and doing the heavy work, even when they've shown me that they're not going to. And my other friends are getting houses bought for them. They're getting houses. They're getting their rings upgraded. Men won't help around the house. They haven't done anything in a year. Are you serious? They're getting what? And I'm calling a psychic about a man who won't even. So yeah, if he wants to, he will. And an entire app built upon the idea that I have to help you do your job is just, the marketing for that was excellent. She really did good for her. Like she deserves to be a bill because she really hit on an idea and like went with it. But yeah, it is very false. So my last question is, what would you like to see your work evolve into? So you've done, what I want to see. There's so many movies out there about being single, or, there was a How to Be Single movie, and it's always like, go out, get drunk, come home with your panties on your neck like a necklace, have a friend who doesn't care that she had 5 sex partners last night, work in advertising. There's all these like movies. And I was reading your book and I was like, this would be interesting. Like, and so do you see like your work evolve? Like, where else do you see yourself going with this?
I mean, I would love nothing more than to tell stories about single women that were like my book, as opposed to Sex and the City, which has been the prevailing narrative since I was in high school, college. Was it college? It was definitely late high school, early
98. It
college.
was 98. Yeah.
Yeah. So I graduated high school in 2000. So since then, Sex and the City has been the prevailing narrative. It's still a prevailing narrative. And we haven't told more stories about single women. We haven't had any sort of different perspective on the single women's story. There are definitely shows that are like, there are female friendships that are centered in television for sure. But the Sex and the City tale started something really cool. And I just don't think that it evolved. First of all, problematic for 1,000 reasons, but I don't think the story evolved. I don't think that it kept going with the generation that it sparked something inside. I think it finished and it left and it was done. But there are some of us that like, Sex and the City ended with all 4 of them partnered. And that isn't how it ends for everyone. First of all, nothing ends. There is no end. There is no happy ending. Things just keep going. There are more chapters and the chapters stopped coming. And I felt like there were just so many different perspectives.
How do you feel about the reboot? Do you watch it? Everybody hates it, but me. I'm the only one that doesn't, because I always felt you follow a woman on Instagram, only because I follow her as well. And so when you like things, you can see like who, whatever. Yeah. And so I looked into her work. Her name is not Carrie Bradshaw. That's what she calls herself.
Yeah, that's my friend Jess.
Oh, okay.
She's a good friend of mine.
So I went to her Medium account and she wrote this article about the show called Those Bitches Lied. And I was like, this was my issue with the show from jump. And basically the thesis of that article is just, they made it seem like, regardless of the happy endings, they made it seem like when I was going to be out in the world, that men were just going to fall. They're just going to fall from the
Thank you.
ceiling.
Thank
And
you.
opportunities, and not even just people falling from the ceiling, but opportunities for love were going to be so abounding, and that this is what my adult sexual life was going to be like. They made me excited for a future that didn't actually ever materialize. And she was like, I'm bitter about it. I am angry. And for me, as like a disgruntled, deacon's kid who had to figure out, wait a minute, I was supposed to be waiting for my husband to have sex, and now I'm 91 and I'm horny. What am I going to do? I was really, because we weren't even allowed to watch it in the house. I didn't even watch Sex and the City until I'm going to be honest with you, until I turned 30. And I really appreciated it because but not because I was like, this is fabulous and this is fun, but I saw it from the struggle side that they were going through. And so that's how I identified with those characters. And I think my perspective has always been different. I do think there are some shows that have attempted to extend the conversation. I was going to bring up Insecure,
of course,
but you just said it ends with everybody partnered and coupled up, and that's not accurate for everyone's life. That's exactly what Insecure did. And while I did like it because they are Black women, and when we talk about like singlehood, this is just U.S. Census statistics, Black women are disproportionately affected, by whatever, lots of different dynamics. So I love to see, I'm like, yay, they all had weddings. But no, that's not realistic. And so that's part of why I like the reboot, because I'm like, yeah, people die, like, and they're trying to have these very like, boomer Gen X women have to raise children in this new era, and it is different, and it is, things are happening. Everyone hates it but me. How do you feel?
I haven't seen it because I'm just done. I'm just done with these characters, and I'm done with this narrative, and I want a show about the realities of single life that includes everyone, that talks about what modern dating has become, because Sex and the City didn't have a chance to touch on it. And I just want something that tells more truth and tells fresher stories, introduces new characters and new narratives and new I'm just done with those moments. I love them, and they hold a very special place in my heart. I still have my DVD collection. It's falling apart. I'm never going to get rid of it. But me and those characters had our time together, and I'm ready for new characters. And I hope that in some way I am able to help inspire them, because I really do have things to say that I know help women feel better, that I know help women stop playing small and settling and allowing their self-worth to drain from their feet. I know that I can help women feel better because I see it every day and I hear it every day. And I'm very grateful that I get the feedback that I do. Those narratives had their place, and it was a wonderful place. And now let's have some new ones.
Let's have a different talk. Okay. So to just go back to my original question, what could you see, or like, what would you like to see happen next in your career with your?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I would absolutely love to be on the radio, to be perfectly honest.
I was just thinking that while you were talking, I was like, do I see her as like a talk show host? And I was like, no, I wouldn't want anybody to interrupt her talking the way I'm doing now. I would want her to be able to have, and to share her stories. I was like, maybe like NPR, and people could call, have, so today we're listening to a story from whatever, very much so an extension of what you do with your podcast, but yes, so the radio.
I would love to be on the radio. I love it as a platform. I'm not a television girl. The visual is never where I feel super comfortable or confident. So I don't feel like I'm my best self in a television medium, though I do need to get better at that, because it's a wonderful space for sort of changing narratives. But I love radio. I would love to do radio. I'm definitely going to keep writing books for sure. If HBO or Netflix or Hulu, because I actually really like Hulu's original content these days, if any of them would like to discuss new narratives and new characters and new paths to take single people down, I'm here. I'm here, and I'm very easy to Google. That would be wonderful.
Okay, cool. I was just really quickly to counter your not good in the visual. I know you have a TikTok account, and occasionally you post, and I'm like, she's good at this. These little videos. So I don't know. I mean, maybe you have a TV presence that you're not giving yourself credit for, but you do have a good voice. And I was thinking that too. I was like, she's definitely like, I would listen.
I love radio. I love it. It's so it's so romantic. The radio is so romantic as a platform. I love it. That's why I love podcasting so much. It feels similar, but I miss the live interaction with an audience that the radio can sometimes provide. And I think being in like a radio setting allows for like like co-host situations where there's like a room full of people discussing something together. And I think that could be really
Yes, because
fun.
I do think your point of view is it's so important. And I think it's so important to I was thinking about this the other day. If you were going to do like a panel of things and just having like different narratives of singledom and having people who have some of those antiquated views of what I mean, if I see one more relationship coach on TikTok, well, now I just block. Because one thing they will not ever say out loud is this is mostly luck. You can do everything in this thing and still not. And I don't like to see people prepared. Maybe that's just the coach in me or like the ex athlete in me. Don't prepare me for a battle that's not going to happen. Like if you're greasing me up and hyping me up, and then I go out there and it's not, man, it's
You
just not.
asked me earlier what my favorite chapter was. It's actually paying for maybes. It's chapter 4. It is
Mm.
paying for maybes. It is all the maybes that single women are convinced we have to pay for with the dating coaches, the relationship coaches, the matchmakers, the dating apps, the books, the everything. And all of it is just paying for a maybe. And we keep doing it for perhaps decades of our lives. So I save your money, put it somewhere else, let go, live. I don't know. Maybe that's the
No,
last thing I'll say today.
as somebody who used to be hooked up to the machines, like somebody in the Matrix, and who now is just going on. Not only do I feel like I'm a nicer person, I never felt like I even knew how to talk to men outside of them seeing me as their possible wife, approaching me first, and now I'm just like, that person seems nice. I'll have a conversation with him. And I'm discovering things about men, like their character outside of romance. I'm like, oh, this is something that I never would have seen or accessed before because I thought of the relationships between men and women very black and white because that's kind of like how I was, you're gonna see, and then also had a lot of those secondary goals, when I would go out. And then even in that sense, when I'm like, I'd like to meet someone, I'm no longer so shackled to we have to be in a long-term relationship, or even I have to talk to him outside of this place
Yeah.
that I'm like, go up and have a conversation, give him a compliment on his shirt, see what the energy is like. If he doesn't want to do it, if he doesn't want to take the reins and be a man and engage with you, leave, leave. Like you're not going to lose out but that's something I never would have done back when I was so focused and so centered. And so, I mean, it was like I was an insane person. I just look back at that and I'm like, so I mean, yeah, I engage with the world is what
Mhm.
I would say. Absolutely.
You
So
weren't insane, by the way. You were not insane. You were a human being who was born when you were born and you grew in the world you grew up in. We all did. And we don't have to feel crazy. We don't have to feel bad. This is what we were taught to do, but we're learning it too.
yeah, yeah. I actually do have to disagree with you though. I was crazy. Other people might, I mean, I go back and like record because I like I said, the internet loves mess. And so I'll record some story times and I'll listen to them and I'm like, I get anxiety and I'm like, what did you do? It was a journey, but I'm happy I had it. So anyway, thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it. Can you like show your book? Like I said, my things are packed up. Yes, there it is, A Single Revolution by Shani
This is my
Silver.
book. Thank you.
And you can find it on Amazon. And you can find, where else can people find you on the internet?
Shani Silver is so easy to Google. It's kind of a gift. It's hard to say if you read it, and no one knows how to pronounce my name ever, but it's
I read the
very
article,
Googleable.
how to pronounce my name, because I was calling you
Thank
Shani and I was like, that's not right. So
I
yes.
think actually Shawnee is the correct pronunciation for my spelling. It's just that my parents said it differently. So no worries there. But yeah, Shani Silver, super easy to Google. My website is shanisilver.com. My Instagram is Shani Silver. Yeah, and there's links to everything in all the places you would expect to find them. So yeah,
And I'll like throw some text on the screen when I edit this together.
thank
So
you.
thank you so much for talking with me. And I hope that my audience gets as much value out of your work that I have over the last, I want to say like 6 or 7 months. It's been very affirming for me. And yeah, I'm grateful that I ran into you. So thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.